and welcome to this special show that gives you a glimpse of the Destination Europe Summit that took place recently here in Brussels. The idea was to show the world that tourism is back to pre-COVID levels here in Brussels, but the sector is facing a lot of challenges, from local pushbacks to adverse weather patterns. The summit was kicked off by the first ever European Commissioner in charge of tourism, Apostolos Tzitzikostas.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is a real privilege for me to join you here today as the European Commissioner for Sustainable Transport and Tourism. You know very well that tourism is a topic that is really close to my heart, and one that I'm committed on supporting with all my heart and all my strength. Tourism is a powerhouse for economic growth, for job creation, for social development. Tourism alone supports over 3 million businesses and provides livelihoods for over 20 million people all across the European Union. In fact, tourism in Europe surged to record levels in 2024, surpassing even the pre-pandemic numbers. But with success comes responsibility. We have seen residents protesting against overcrowding, against cost of housing and environmental strain. Tourism must be developed responsibly, attracting visitors who value authentic experiences, support local businesses, and travel off-season and off the beaten track. That is why we are working on an ambitious European strategy for sustainable tourism that we will present the first quarter of 2026. United, we will ensure that Destination Europe stands for excellence, diversity, and sustainability. Imagine seamless single ticketing for cross-border rail travel. Imagine easier cross-border rental car services, or a stronger EU passenger right regulation. Well, my dear friends, all this is coming, and I am here, rest assured, to work with you very closely in the coming years. Thank you very much for your attention.
One of the topics that came up here a lot was that of sustainable tourism. Glenn Fogel, the CEO of Booking.com, was here on stage sharing his thoughts.
There's big plans here in this continent to be carbon neutral by 2050. What are you seeing in that field? Is there a lust for travellers to be more sustainable, and what role as well is Booking.com playing here?
So I'm going to speak the honest truth, and it's on the record, so I'm going to be careful, okay? Everybody wants to be sustainable, but they want somebody else to be sustainable. If it's cheaper, even though it's less sustainable, many people choose that. This is where you need governments to come in.
Here in Europe, it's a priority, but it's not, of course, in other parts of the world.
Which is problematic, because the last time I checked, we just have one atmosphere. And it doesn't divide up. It's not like, okay, we get to the end of Europe, and now we get a different atmosphere over, and that's not it. And so if another country is building 2 coal plants a week, okay, we can do all we want to make sure we are more sustainable in our area, but that's not going to help in terms of the problems for the world.
Another question, Glenn, for you. The travel industry, for example, in Europe, we all tend to take holidays at the same time, during school holidays, for example, and we all tend to go to our top favourite destinations. What role can you play here in helping to diversify regions and promote other, more obscure parts that also need tourism and need to be brought alive?
So the bigger issue is we'll work with all of you on this. It's an issue. And I'm going to, again, go back to a truth that we all know. This is going to be really hard, because people around the world who have not gone to Paris are going to want to go to Paris. And we can do all the marketing we want for Normandy. And we can say what a wonderful place it is to visit historical sites. I'm telling you, there are billions of people and they want to go to Paris. We're not going to be able to change that. So how are we going to deal with this? Because it is a problem. In summer in Amsterdam, you can't walk. Barcelona, Venice, Florence, it goes on, and it is going to get worse. And one way that may be the way to do it, there may be a need to bring in some sort of price mechanism that will cap the number of people who go to a certain location. And that, again, goes to the governments and the regulators and the community to decide how they want to do it.
And just one final question, Glenn Fogel. We're at the start of a new political mandate here in Brussels. What would you whisper into the ear of the Commissioner? What should his 3 top priorities be?
Okay, the first thing is look at where we are today. Let's see what can we change that's already out there. Make sure we got that straightened the way we want it. Then, once we get that accomplished, then we can look at, okay, are there new things to be done? That would be really helpful.
So work on what we've got before you start presenting new.
I think it'd be helpful.
Glenn Fogel, CEO of Booking.com, thank you so much for being with us here at Destination Europe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
A number of panels also took place here at the Destination Europe Summit. We heard lots of ideas about how to make this continent the most sustainable in the world.
Just when it comes to trends, Olivier, do you see a shift in demand perhaps from air to rail?
Yes, there is a shift. I think we need more multimodality, clearly. Very often our airport CEOs are frustrated in terms of how slow is it to develop multimodality, especially with the rail sector. Having said that, I think there's a lot of dogmatism in the debate about shifting rail for air. And I think it's down to the fact that it's usually poorly informed in terms of data, because if you look at the actual potential for substitutability, it's quite small. I mean, Eurocontrol came up with a very interesting study last December, which shows that assuming that all current plans for high-speed train development could be effectively delivered in Europe, which is not a given, the potential by 2050 to reduce air travel by this shift would be just 0.3% less demand for air travel.
It's unquestioned and undisputed that the entire transport sector, just like every other economy sector, has to decarbonize. Yes, it will take time because it's a hard-to-abate sector, as you said. Yes, it will take time because the alternative fuels that are needed for that sector are not there yet, but they should be gradually coming into place. We just published something which is called Flight Emission Label, which we will encourage, because it's a voluntary label, we will encourage airlines to sign up to. And once they do, when you will be buying the ticket for this specific airline, you will see the emissions, and it will all be counted in a comparable and verified manner.
And just to come back to this idea of brand Europe, where we are on that, we heard the Commissioner earlier, he mentioned this idea of a unified European tourism brand. How can it be strengthened, Daniel?
I would like to think of brand Europe not as Rome, Valletta, Brussels, Vienna. I would like to think as brand Europe in terms of our culture, in terms of our history, in terms of our product offerings, our culinary experiences, our hospitality. That is brand Europe. That is what unites us. And that is what we must strive to achieve.
Brand Europe works. And it does not just for the very far tourists, it actually works for us. And I think this is interesting. Why? Because if I think about my main source market, but I think this applies as well to Croatia, to Greece, also to Malta. I mean, my number one source market is Germany. So it is Europeans, and then you have France, and then you have Spain. It is Europeans also that love to travel in Europe. So we must have a vision of brand Europe, of something that unites us as well and keeps us very strong.
We have the same currency. We have the same visa regime for the third countries. We share the same values. We have rich history, culture, natural heritage. We are really unique as a destination. And this is the opportunities also in front of us for the brand Europe. So I'm very positive about this.
And apart from going green, another big topic that was discussed here today was how to make sure that tourism is not just focused on certain hotspots and other people can also reap the benefits.
You've rolled out a brand new sustainable tourism strategy which keeps in mind the locals and their needs. Can you tell us more about it, Paul?
We're lucky in Ireland in that we have a really high tourism approval rating, probably the highest in the world. Over 70% of local residents are positive towards tourism. But really important is that we need to keep engaging the local community in how we develop tourism and have their voice at the heart. And we do that. We develop as a national organisation. We're in the process of rolling out local tourism plans for practical practically every county in Ireland, and within that the voice of the host community is at the heart of how we're developing tourism in those areas. But then also an awful lot of work decarbonising the tourism sector on the ground, working with businesses to help them to measure their carbon through carbon calculators and then reduce their carbon footprint through various measures.
And just, you mentioned sustainability and the goals there. I'm looking at yourself from Madeira, a beautiful island, but it's also known as a sustainable tourism destination. How did you manage to get that stamp?
With regards to Madeira, we have a sustainability strategy. At the moment, we develop public incentives for having electric cars, not only for locals, but also for companies. At the time when I used to work at the airports, we had incentives for off-peak changes in the timetables in the flights, so that we could have flights in days where we have less pressure. So many measures that all together made us possible to get the certification to be a sustainable tourism destination.
I'm sorry to interrupt,
Go ahead, jump in.
but I was so inspired by what was being mentioned in Ireland. And we've started something called Best Tourism Villages, which is an initiative that actually recognizes villages around the world with less than 15,000 inhabitants. And we've seen how, first of all, the pride that's created in their own villages for being recognized and for being visited. We're talking about community sentiment. And that sense of pride really changes also how they benefit from the sector, how they get engaged, and how then they can work with public and private sector.
But on Intrepid, actually, tell us about exactly what travellers are looking for when they want this special experience and how the industry can better meet their expectations as well.
Well, you'll be surprised because 70% of our customers are new customers. It's only 30% that are repeats, and often customers who attract for the first time on an Intrepid trip are not necessarily looking for village experience. They're looking to go on a tour with a group of people to experience a destination, and they often book the trip because they've seen either Venice or Marrakesh on the itinerary. But what we see in the comments and the feedback that we get from them, as a large majority, it's those sort of experiences that came as the highlight. And those are the reason why they then book again with us.
And I think the most important thing here is that we do not transfer challenges. So by promoting alternative destinations or diversifying tourist flows, we need to make sure that we actually learn the lessons from those regions and destinations that were or are affected by unbalanced tourism or over-tourism, for instance, and make sure that we don't just transfer tourists and all the challenges linked to that. So we in the European Commission, how do we do this? We usually do it through peer learning and knowledge sharing. We also do funding a lot. It was mentioned before, so we have around 17 billion euros from EU funding that is spent on sustainable tourism, and some of it includes promotion of alternative destinations. Actually, some of it is also channeled through the European Travel Commission that is hosting us today. We have a very nice project that I have the chance of managing, which is matchmaking destinations that have similar problems so that they learn from each other. So one thing we try to do is also to streamline all this information, have a sort of one-stop shop for everything tourism related, which is called the EU Tourism Platform. And hopefully this also will facilitate the life of our stakeholders.
Wow, so you're keeping very busy there and will be for the immediate future.
I just wanted to add one thing regarding silver tourism. So for people over 55 years old, this is a segment that we should develop. We should have EU policies directed to this segment, because it's people that have time available, they have money to travel, they can travel in off-peak seasons. Many of them are enjoying already their retirement, and they can travel off-peak, and this has many advantages that were on this study as well. You reduce the energy consumption if they live in northern European countries and they go to the south. We save energy. There is healthcare savings as well in the national health system, so lots of advantages. It's a segment that's growing, as we know, so we should bet on that and have specific funding and policies for that.
Yeah. Tourism is probably one of the sectors that touches all parts of our lives, because tourists are temporary residents in a place. And I think probably one of the interesting measures would be to have some kind of mechanism where all the people who are working in tourism, the Parliament, the Commission, and everyone responsible can have some kind of coordination mechanism on a regular basis to consult, to advance proposals. So maybe we can have thematic commission materials at least once a year on tourism, so everyone can come together and have the same discussion.
Well, that was just a glimpse of the Destination Europe Summit that took place here in Brussels. If you'd like to see the full show, you can check it out on our website or read many articles, of course, on Euronews.com. Reach out to us as well on our socials. See you soon on Euronews.